My name is Rebecca Williams, and I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and the nutrition manager at the Grains and Legumes Nutrition Council. And today, I will be lifting the lid on low carbohydrate diets. GLNC is the independent authority on the nutrition and health benefits of grains and legumes. We're a health promotion charity and a not-for-profit organization that aims to review the research and track trends to promote grains and legumes nutrition as part of a balanced diet. Today, we'll start with consumer behavior and sentiment around grains and carbohydrates, and then look at whether the rumors commonly associated with carbohydrates, whether they're actually true. We will look at the role of carbohydrate in exercise and whether carbohydrates really are to blame. If we start with consumer behavior, the results of a recent GLNC study show that it is evident that people are eating less core grain foods, with a 30% reduction in consumption between 2011 and 2014. Consumption of breakfast cereals dropped by 21%, bread by 35%, and pasta by 20%. Interestingly, however, what we see is that people are eating less core grain foods, but total grain consumption is steady. Now, this means while people appear to be restricting healthy grain foods, such as muesli or oats, they're still consuming discretionary grain foods, including muffins and pies. When Australian consumers were asked about which foods they avoided to help with weight loss, 73% said bread, 58% said pasta, and 43% rice. Males were found to be even more likely than females to avoid all carbohydrate foods to help with weight loss. But before we all jump on the bandwagon, let's take a step back and look at whether the rumors commonly associated with carbohydrates are actually true. If we start with the rumor that we've all heard before, that carbohydrates make you fat. Now, the rationale behind this rumor is that as carbohydrate intake increased, so did the rate of obesity. However, what we find is that over the past 30 to 40 years, total energy intake increased from all foods, not just carbohydrate. Additionally, research from many parts of the world does not support this contention that carbohydrate consumption increases body weight. In fact, people who eat more carbohydrate, particularly carbs derived from quality grain foods, such as those that are high in whole grain and fiber, tend to have a lower BMI and less body fat compared to those who eat less. The research that these facts are based on are reviews of a large number of studies, not just one study or the case of a doctor seeing patients. Expert advisory committees around the world also support this view that carbohydrate intake does not cause an increase in body weight. As an example, the 2015 UK Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition said that the hypothesis that diets higher in total carbohydrate cause weight gain is not supported by the evidence. The second popular rumor is that a low carbohydrate diet is good for weight loss. Now, the first thing to recognize here is that a low carb diet you hear about at the gym will likely be different to the one your friend tells you about, which will likely be different again to the one you've read about in magazines. But generally what we hear talked about is termed a very low carbohydrate diet, and it's one that contains less than 40 grams of carbohydrate per day. As an example, this could be equivalent to having around 2 slices of toast for breakfast, and then no grains, legumes, fruit, vegetables, or dairy foods for the rest of the day. The theory is that a very low carbohydrate diet induces ketosis, and this is when the body does not have enough glucose for energy, which comes from carbohydrate, so it is forced to use fat as its primary fuel source. Now, the research shows that a very low carbohydrate diet may help with weight loss in the short term, particularly in overweight and obese individuals. However, this level of restriction would be hard to maintain in the long term, and there is no evidence that a very low carbohydrate diet that vastly restricts core grain foods offers long-term advantages for sustained weight loss. And we all know when it comes to weight loss, the most important predictor of success with any diet is being able to stick with it so that you can not only lose the weight, but also keep it off. While there is, of course, no one diet that fits all, for most people, the good news is that you can still enjoy healthy sources of carbohydrate, including core grain foods, legumes, fruit, vegetable, and dairy foods, and still lose weight. In fact, research has shown that a moderate carbohydrate diet can lead to reductions in body weight and body fat, whilst also maintaining muscle mass. For the average person, an energy-restricted, higher protein, moderate carbohydrate diet can include 4 serves of core grain foods each day, choosing preferably those that are high in fiber or whole grain. This should be adopted within the context of a balanced diet that includes foods from each of the 5 core food groups and limits intakes of discretionary foods, such as confectionery, soft drink, and takeaway foods. Carbohydrate foods are an essential part of a healthy, balanced diet, and they're even more important for those who are active or exercising regularly. While there may not be severe performance declines for people who exercise at low intensities, for those who train at a moderate to high intensity, you can compromise the quality of your training sessions and performance by following a low carbohydrate diet. This is because during moderate to high intensity exercise, the body is unable to use fat as a fuel quickly enough, and it requires carbohydrate to produce energy. Carbohydrate foods such as grains are also rich in B vitamins, which help our body convert food into fuel. Inadequate carbohydrate intake may also compromise the maintenance or increase in lean mass, and this is the total weight of your body minus the weight of your fat mass, and it has also been linked to a decreased immune function in athletes. The Sports Dietitians of Australia recommend that to avoid compromising performance, people who want to exercise at a moderate to high intensity during training sessions, they should be including quality carbohydrates in their diet, and the amount of carbohydrate eaten should be matched to their training goals. For those who are interested in receiving individualized advice about their nutrition and exercise, they should book to see an accredited sports dietitian. The fourth and final rumor is that a low carbohydrate diet is good for your health in the long term. But what are the facts? So there's actually no evidence for a benefit in the long term, and people who eat carbohydrate, particularly carbs that are high in whole grain or fiber, are no more likely to develop chronic diseases such as diabetes. A comprehensive review of a low-carb and a balanced weight loss diet found no difference between the diets in blood pressure, cholesterol, or blood glucose levels in the short and longer term. In fact, research shows that those who follow a low-carb, high-protein diet in the long term are more likely to die at a younger age. A low-carb, high-protein diet may also have an unfavorable effect on your gut microbiome and increase your risk of gastrointestinal disorders. But if carbs aren't to blame, what is? Well, it's complicated. Poor food choices are likely to play a significant role, and as we can see on the graph, the percentage of Australians meeting dietary recommendations for each of the 5 core food groups is less than 31%. Stress, screen time, and sedentary activity are also likely to play a role. So the best advice is to cut down on discretionary foods and eat a balanced diet that contains foods from each of the core 5 food groups. This is the same message that is promoted by the Australian Dietary Guidelines that are backed by over 1,000 research studies. So the bottom line is that low carbohydrate diets are no better than higher carbohydrate diets for health and weight loss in the long term. Low carbohydrate diets can impact moderate to high intensity exercise, training and performance. And people who eat 6 serves of grain foods a day, choosing mostly whole grain or high fiber options, are actually less likely to develop diabetes, have heart disease or a heart attack, and to die at a younger age. I've included some links where you can find further information about what I've spoken about today. as well as a full reference list of all of the studies that I referred to. I hope you found that useful. Thank you for listening.